All right. Welcome everyone to the first Sustainable Semi Venture Forum. My name is John Wei. I'm an investment director at Applied Ventures, which is the corporate venture arm of Applied Materials. I'll be the event host today. We're super excited to bring to you today's event. This is in collaboration with semiconductor industry leaders, our partners, customers, and even competitors, including Micron, Intel, EMD Electronics, Lam Research, Semi, and more. We've got a great lineup of speakers today. You're going to hear from semiconductor industry executives, sustainability leaders, VCs, technical experts, and innovators. The focus of today is really the overlapping area of three topics: sustainability, semiconductor, and venture investments. So to kick things off, we'll have Mr. Ajit Manocha of SEMI and Chris Librie of Applied Materials to give a keynote speech. Mr. Manocha is the president and CEO of SEMI, which is the global industry association serving the electronics manufacturing and design supply chain. Previously, Mr. Manocha was the CEO at Global Foundries and had held various executive roles at Spension and NXP. He was recently inducted to the Semiconductor Industry Hall of Fame and the Silicon Valley Engineering Hall of Fame. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Ajit Manocha.
Thank you, John. And good morning to everyone from sunny California. So it's really a great honor to be presenting on this very important topic for the world. So what I'd like to cover in today's presentation is about the sustainability's impact on society. I think most of you know what the sustainability challenges are and also understand the societal impact. My thinking is that I just want to reinforce the reasons for the situation, and then what role semiconductor industry can play to understand the problem and solve the problem, and what's the call to action, and then I'll make some closing remarks. So just briefly about SEMI, if some of you are not familiar with SEMI, SEMI is a 50-year-old association. Basically, we connect the entire supply chain from design and manufacturing, from equipment, material makers to fab makers, fabless and foundries and so on. Basically, we connect the supply chain, the entire value chain, all the way to systems and application houses. And what you will see in the next slide, that this is really the SEMI's ecosystem, where we connect the electronic supply chain, which is total revenue of that is about 2.5 trillion today. And in next 5 years, it's going to be, next 10 years is going to be well over $4 trillion. So the revenue for the entire supply chain. And if you look at this slide, there are a number of initiatives that SEMI holds, and smart mobility on the side, smart medtech, smart manufacturing, and smart data. Now, why is this important? If you really look at the smart mobility, one of the takeaway for that is the zero emissions, which is very critical for us to deal with the topic today. And SEMI is really on the top right, left, center on this topic. And on the bottom left periphery of the slide, you see smart manufacturing, which is really the crucial to enable Industry 4.0 and now going on to the Industry 5.0. And the great news is that this lot of solutions coming from the Industry 4.0 technologies are actually enabling the solutions for supply chain, for the sustainability. So this is really what SEMI is playing a role in many different ways, but this was just a brief overview of where SEMI is helping with the sustainability issues. Now, just understand the problem. This is really a very serious topic. If you look at the slide and look at the graph on the left, the global average temperature used to be around 0.87 for hundreds of years. But in last 50 years, as the industrialization has taken place and urbanization has taken place, the average temperature, which was pretty stable around 0.87, has gone up to 1.2 degrees centigrade. And I will pretty soon I'll tell you the impact of that increase. And what we found is that most of the increase is coming from the greenhouse gas emissions, like warming is because of carbon dioxide. 2/3 of the greenhouse gas warming is CO2, and it's the longest lived caused by humans. And this is making it the key to limit warming. So if we go to the next slide. Now, what does it mean? I think it's very clear that we hear global warming. We hear a lot of people complaining about changes in our environment. And if you really look at the entire environmental issues or sustainability issue, it is at a tipping point. There are increasing natural disasters, droughts, deep freeze in Texas, fires, and we heard about fires in countries like Turkey and Greece. We never heard those things before as common. And also the number of hurricanes, which have gone more in number in recent years, and also very intense. The very first time the hurricane recently caused a drought in New York City. We've never heard of that before. And obviously this is happening because of the climate change. And companies are facing intensifying government regulations because everybody is concerned about it. Key stakeholders are demanding actions like investors are mobilizing assets. The up and coming generation of talent view. These days, when we hire people, they really ask that question. Are you committed to sustainability? And that's really very refreshing to hear when the young generation is very concerned about sustainability. And consumers are also increasingly looking for green products. One positive note is that the cost of green technologies are definitely coming down. Well, this is really about impact. Now, if you really look at, if we don't do anything, what will happen? Do nothing scenario, the temperature 1.2, the global mean temperature, which is 1.2 degrees centigrade, will go beyond 2 degrees Celsius in next 20 years or 30 years. This is given. This is going to happen if we do nothing. But if we do certain actions, we can probably stabilize to 1.5 degrees. And if we go very gung-ho, we can probably bring this carbon footprint to net zero by 2040 or 2050. So again, first of all, I want to thank McKinsey for partnership with SEMI on this topic, and they've been providing a lot of research data. And that's very clear if you look on the right side of the graph, that if we make certain actions, we can reduce the carbon footprint by 50 to 55%. And of course, we can go to net zero by 2050. Excuse me. Now let us focus on what role semiconductor industry can play. First of all, it's very important to understand that a large semiconductor fab can consume electricity at 100 megawatts per hour, enough to power 50,000 houses. A single fab can use up to 9 million gallons of water per day. This is really very, very serious. Now, in light of these points, we have to keep in mind that there are 70 new fabs have been announced. They will be coming online in the next 4 to 6 years. So is this a problem? Yes. But is semiconductor industry a problem? Yes. But at the same time, we are the part of the solution as well. So if you look at advancements in semiconductors, the smart manufacturing is enabling solutions for green technologies, and that's going to help reduce the carbon footprint. So beyond the technology, we also need to work with the solutions, which I will highlight in a minute. So, but let's first define what carbon neutral or zero carbon means. People use those definitions. Sometimes it confuses the audience, but a primary sustainability goal for industry is to be carbon neutral, which we're defining as having remaining emissions balanced with certificates and offsets. And I'll explain that in a minute. And secondly, a more aggressive longer-term goal to achieve zero carbon, which means achieving zero emissions or having emissions compensated through removals. Now, there are three scopes that we believe are the root cause for the problems. Direct emissions. Now, scope 2 is the emissions from utilities. And the scope 3 is a third-party emission. Basically, we're looking at the supply chain or the value chain from start to finish, from where we start and where the consumers come in play. Now, with McKinsey, working with McKinsey and our team identified 5 levers which will make a big impact on dealing with these issues. So key lever 1, reduce operations by typically simply energy consumption to reduce the energy consumption. And that's done by maximizing efficiency through innovation or many other ways that I know when I ran fabs for many years, that was one of the always big focus. How do you reduce energy consumption in the fab? Either by working with the suppliers to have the equipment which will consume less energy, or when equipment is not being used, it's in idle mode, we turn it off, so save energy. Number 2, optimization of energy supply. Well, purchase and generate renewable energy. I know we are at Applied Venture today. Applied has put solar system on their in Santa Clara facilities, I will say maybe 15 years ago, and they're generating their own energy. That's really a very smart, very commendable action by Applied. And I know many companies are doing that too, but that's what many of us need to do. Now, if you look at the third-party emission, the value chain, if you look at the upstream and the downstream, so the working for suppliers on decarbonization, which can take far more pressuring them to reduce emission, and that's happening. Number 4, reducing process level gas house emission by stepping up abatement of specialty gases, such as those used in burn chambers, as well as optimizing gas usage and avoid leakages. And another scenario is the downstream. It entails working on reduction of energy consumption with customers, with an example being improving the energy efficiency of electronic products such as smartphones and laptops. And again, this is happening, but probably not enough. As mentioned before, companies can seek to offset remaining emissions through credits and certificates. So that's really is in a nutshell the approach that I talked about, the 5 levers, which will help reduce the carbon emission or CO2 emission across the value chain. Now, some of the big companies, social media companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon, they are actually facing pressure from their stakeholders and passing along demands for emission cuts to their suppliers. So, and that is in what it means is that suppliers like us, Applied Materials, Samsung, Global Foundries, Intel, you name it, TSMC, they're under a lot of pressures from the OEMs that you must reduce the global greenhouse gas emission substantially. Otherwise, doing business may become a challenge. So again, all the semiconductor players are engaging in those 5 key levers I mentioned, and this opens up opportunities for equipment material suppliers and for innovators like the startups represented here today to contribute to the solutions to help the industry reduce emission. Now, good news is that some of the companies have really lofty goals for renewable energies and the carbon footprint reduction, and some are saying we can make a massive improvement by 2030. Well, hats off to them for doing that. But semi industry is also setting ambitious goals and taking actions on decarbonization, renewable energy, and water conservation. Now, what role semi is playing? As of early this year, SEMI formed a strategic advisory council for sustainability, or SAC, which involves many companies which are highlighted with the logos: Advantus, Applied Materials, ASM, ASML, Excelis, and so on. I'm not going to read all the names, but this is just a beginning of the formation of the advisory council. And we will welcome more companies to join. Fortunately, most of the companies involved in the venture event today are already have joined the advisory council. Now, what this advisory council will do is creating a viable sustainability roadmap for the industry. I mean, we are actually used to working with the roadmaps. Our industry is known for that. And I think that's the first thing we need to do is start with the roadmap. And then again, guiding suppliers on requirements and reporting, and working on the setting standards and the goals and definitions for the industry around sustainability. And again, like I said, we'd love to have more members join us. Now, why SEMI? I think this is very clear. SEMI has been in existence for 50 years, and we have been known for setting standards on many things, especially on safety and efficiencies. We've been also known for heavily involvement in technology roadmaps. For example, we're recently focused on the HIR, the heterogeneous integration roadmap. So we have the competence of bringing people together and develop these kind of roadmaps. Hence, we will also develop the sustainability advisory council's roadmap. So societal governance such as DEI, SEMI has a major focus on workforce development, diversity, equity, and inclusion. As I mentioned before, that these days, the young students, when they come to the industry, they generally ask the question, are you committed to sustainability? Yes or no? If not, they don't see much interest in working for our industry. And this I have personally experienced in some interviews. So we are again, I can go on. We have many events, and every event we have some kind of a focus on some kind of a pavilion on sustainability or a circular economy. You name it. Every Semicon event around the world, we generally end up having a massive focus on sustainability, and this is going to now increase several folds going forward. Plus, on the advocacy side, we spend a lot of energy on public-private policies on EHS, which is also very relevant for this, as well as other trade issues. So with that, I will say taking actions to advance sustainability is our key message for today. This is to, the time is now, either we take the action or we're going to be left behind. This is both doing the right things to preserve our planet as well as meeting the demands of the industry stakeholders. At SEMI, sustainability initiative shows members are taking actions to find a common path forward. Industry does need help with the sustainability push, particularly with innovation, to demonstrate its commitment to being part of the solution. I'm happy to see the semiconductor companies and their venture capital groups taking leadership to drive innovation for greener semi manufacturing. Today's event is a perfect example. Now, let me say it now, because I won't be staying until the end of this event. At the end of the forum, there will be an announcement about the first ever pan-industry sustainability pitch event for startups looking to help drive positive change in the semiconductor industry. I applaud ASML, Intel, Lam, Merck, and Micron for coming together to create this. Please make sure to stay tuned for the details. Now, finally, call to action. I encourage companies to join SEMI's sustainability advisory councils to advance this critical effort for the industry. One point I like to emphasize here is that sustainability truly is for 2,500 SEMI members worldwide and broader supply chain. And this slide shows how you can get involved, how you can contribute. And again, I look forward to seeing the impact we'll make it together. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Ajit. Fantastic insights. We really sincerely appreciate your leadership as well as SEMI's leadership on this topic. What a great way to kick things off.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Next up is Chris Librie from Applied Materials. Chris is the Director of ESG and Corporate Sustainability. Let's welcome Chris Librie.
Thank you very much, John. It's great to be here, and thanks also to Ajit for an outstanding presentation. It's a pleasure to join the conference this morning and share with you a little bit more about Applied's vision for the next 10 years, our ESG roadmap, which we call Make Possible a Better Future. And I think Ajit did a terrific job of setting the framework on climate change and the call to action, the need for our industry to step up and make changes. I would add to it just one other thing, which is we've been living through the number of months of a global pandemic, which has created even more demand for our industry and for semiconductors. In fact, a conference of this nature is made possible by 1 quintillion transistors. You think about what's happening. I may not be at an Applied office right now, but the principle still applies, that we're working this through local servers, going through data centers, and back to whatever location you all may be at. And 1 quintillion transistors is 10 to the power of 18. So I'll save you the trouble of counting the zeros there. So there's a lot more demand, not only for our products, but there's a lot more demand for artificial intelligence. We would estimate that there'll be 500 billion connected devices by the year 2030, and that those devices will be generating a 0.5 yottabyte of data. So I'm throwing around some big numbers here. A yottabyte is 10 to the 25th. So it's really, a huge demand. We have forecast and we know that that increase in artificial intelligence and data generated automatically by our devices is going to completely outstrip population growth. And again, that's great for our business. We're the folks who are making those products, as Ajit showed, in the semi ecosystem that help to answer this demand. But the challenge is, if we don't change fundamentally the way we work, it will increase the use of energy by data centers from roughly 2% of the world's total energy to 15% by 2025. So that Applied Materials has long had a goal and a vision to make possible. That's what we do in the technologies that we deliver. But we've modified that in the last couple of years to make possible a better future. We think the semiconductor industry is well positioned to answer this challenge, and that by working together, by changing the way we operate across all scopes and across our semi ecosystem, we can actually help to empower a better future for the planet. In order to do that, we've set a framework, and this framework really kind of closely mirrors some of the things that we've seen already today. The idea of our operations, our value chain, the semi-industry's operations, and then even thinking beyond that and the impact of global electronics. And we call it 1x, 100x, and 10,000x. And those designations roughly correspond to the orders of magnitude between each of those impacts. Clearly, as you move across that spectrum, the ability to make change becomes more challenging. It's much easier to change your own operations than to change the impact of electronics globally. But that's why we need to work together. That's why we need to be, connected and working as an industry. In order to advance this framework, we have what we call the 4 Ps: purpose, people, planet, and progress. And I know this conference this morning is very much focused on environmental sustainability, and I'll focus my discussion there too. But I don't want to lose the fact that there is an S in ESG, and S stands for social. And so not only our purpose and community action is part of that, but definitely driving toward a greater culture of inclusion within our operations is really critical to the 1X piece as well. And then working across the value chain on issues like human rights and conflict minerals also really impact the S as far as we're concerned. So I do want to say that this is a comprehensive approach across our business and through the values that we drive through our business as well. But turning to the 1X, maybe giving a little bit more color here, and I know Ajit flashed this up very, very briefly, but we've made a commitment to 100% renewable energy in our operations by 2030. We will achieve that actually next year, amazingly, here in the US. And that's mainly through what you see, a wind power project that's quite significant in putting new energy on the grid in Texas. In conjunction with that, we'll reduce our carbon emissions by 50% over that time period by 2030. We'll also set science-based targets. Science-based targets are all about maintaining emissions that are within line to keep our global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And then we'll also begin to report next year in line with the TCFD framework. So these are all important things within the 1X environmentally. Turning to the 100X, I will we'll have some more comments about this later from our next panel, our next segment. But the important thing that we've done is we've started looking at that value chain. So number one, our products. You know, how do we make those more efficient for our customers? And we have announced this 3x30 goal, which is to reduce by 30% equivalent energy, chemical consumption, and also our footprint, the space that we used for our pass-through per wafer, all by 2030. So this is a major step forward and definitely will impact our Scope 3. Also in Scope 3 and 100X, we're driving something called Success 2030. That's our supply chain certification for environmental and social sustainability. And we're working with a number of partners. So here's that semi ecosystem in action, really working closely to improve their footprints with them in a collaborative way, but also looking at ways that we can improve the transportation of our products and to be more efficient in terms of the way we operate our supply chain on the upstream side, as Ajit mentioned earlier. So if you think about the entire framework and you think about what's happening here, there's steps in place, goals in place against each of these parts of the framework, 1X, 100X, 10,000X. I've talked about the 1X and 100X in some detail. On the 10,000X side, this is all about moving beyond Moore's law and thinking in terms of this PPAC-T framework, power performance and area cost, and the T, the italic T, is all about time. It's about moving quickly and making changes. And again, I know I've said it a few times, it's all about collaboration. It's all about bringing together partners up and down the value chain and working with organizations like Alphabet and Microsoft and Apple in order to be able to find ways to deliver our products and electronics in a more energy efficient way. So it's a lot of work. There's a lot of steps that need to be achieved. And in fact, one last thing I would say is, although these goals are out there to 2030, we are actually setting a framework and a roadmap for them by fiscal year and putting those goals into our corporate scorecard and actually making them part of the measurement of our business as we go forward. So it's a long journey. We've started that journey. We're making progress toward it. And I would definitely say there's a lot of opportunity for innovation and collaboration here and cooperation across the industry. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the day's events and the conclusions that come from this. So I'll wrap my presentation here, and I think we're going to transition fairly soon into a panel discussion. So